Hey guys, in this video I will take you through how to start up Unreal Engine, how to create your first project, a blueprint project, and how to then navigate through the Unreal editor and how to use your content folders, how to use the viewport, and just what is it that you see when the editor starts up, what is everything? Well, let's take a look. Hello guys, okay, so step 1 is always to launch your Epic Games Launcher. And as soon as your Epic Games Launcher is launched, we head over to the library. And over here you should see engine versions. You can click on the plus. And this is where you can install any engine version of Unreal. Currently, I got 4.26 installed, which is the latest version. So let's go ahead and click on Launch. Okay, so when the editor is launched, you will be presented with this screen where you can make a choice between a couple of different categories for your project. I suggest that you choose the game category if you're making a game, of course. So let's go to next. And then the next screen that you're presented with is the template screen. So Unreal Engine out of the box comes with a couple of templates. There's a first person template, which is really useful. Here you can read the description of what kind of stuff is inside of this template. Most tutorials on the internet, you will actually see that they use the third person template. But if you're trying to make it like a racing game or something, there's also a handy vehicle template or vehicle advanced template. So for this video, let's go ahead and select the third person template and click on next. Now you will be presented with the project settings screen. I recommend that you leave all these settings to standard, that you choose the correct destination for your project, and that you give your project a name. So when we look at this drop down here, Blueprints or C++, it's good to know that if you choose Blueprint to start off with, you can always add C++ classes later to have a combined project of both C++ and Blueprint. Okay, let's create this first project now. Okay, so when the editor is launching your project, you will be presented with all of this. So what is all of this? Well, first of all, here on the bottom, you see the content browser. What I always like to do is click on this little icon here, show or hide source panel. And what this does is that it opens up your source panel, which makes it easier for you to see all of your content. So even if you open this one up, and even if you're in your blueprint folder, for instance, you can still easily go and navigate to other folders, instead of closing this and just having to go through this and then go back like this. So that's tip number 1, and that's what this whole panel does. You can import assets just by clicking the import button, finding your folder location for your assets and importing them, or you can just, whenever you have some assets, so let's say I have assets on my desktop, I could just drag them in and Unreal would automatically import them. So some other things that you see is the viewport here in the middle of your screen. If you hold right mouse button, you can look around the viewport, and then by using WASD, you can move around. E goes up, Q goes down, and this is just like any of your regular spectate cameras in the video game, so this should be familiar to you. And then on the left here, we have the Place Actors panel. Here you can search between some basic actors that Unreal Engine delivers straight out of the box, like a cube or a sphere. And also you could use the geometry over here to create your own types of boxes. And this is easy for making prototype levels. You can just drag these out, etc. So that's good to know. Here's also the tab for visual effects. So if you want to add a sky atmosphere, for instance, or any post-process volumes, this is where you can find those. And here you can find your cameras as well. What I always like to do is have it on basic, and then if I need a camera in my level, for instance, I just type it in, and you can drag all of these into the scene and use them. That covers the Place Actor panel. Then here on the top right, you will see your world outliner. This basically has everything that you can see in the world. So if I click objects here, you can see in the world outliner where it will show up. You can actually click on items that are in the world, and if you press F, you will zoom in toward that actor. So if you ever look for an item that you cannot find, for instance, my player network started and I don't know where I put it, you can just click it here or search for it here. You press F. Oh, instead of clicking here, you actually have to click the item, you press F and you zoom in towards the item. So that's a handy tip as well. And then here on the bottom right, we will see the details panel. So whatever element or object that we select in the world, you will see all the details that are exposed of this object. So for instance, my character, I can see all of the components that my character has. So I can see the character movement component, all of its settings and value. I can see my camera boom, which is attached to my character, etc., etc. For this cube, for instance, I can see the cube. I can also size the cube here, so I can lock it. I can put this to 2, size my cube. I can make it movable, and then I could, for instance, simulate physics on this cube. So if I were to drag this up and click on play, my cube would fall down and actually simulate physics. Now it's a really heavy cube, so I can't just move it around. But let me show you. If you make it a little bit smaller, like this, hit play, now I will actually be able to move this cube around. So that's some basic physics for you guys. And that's how that works. So as you see, I'm toggling between some modes here. Those modes can be found up here, and there are shortcuts for them. W, E to rotate, and then R to scale stuff. These are the basic functionalities like you can see in programs like Blender and Maya. So these are the same. You can use your keyboard to switch between these and change the location and stuff of items. So that's really handy to know. Then something that's also important is that you can use the grid snapping. So now it's snapping 10 at the time. You could also snap 100 at the time, for instance. Or if you don't like this snapping, you can just turn off your grid, which would make it just super fluid. I always like to use 10. And the same goes for rotation. So if you're rotating, now it snaps with 10. You can also hold shift to snap it in place. So that's what this does. And the last thing about the viewport is that up here you can change your camera speed. So if you have a big level, you might want to use camera speed 5. If you have a smaller level, or if you're planting some precision stuff like a plant, for instance, you might want to use camera speed number 3 for a better precision, basically. Okay, let's change this back to 4. So that covers all of this. Then some handy stuff up here is that you can save your current level. You can always press save all, which saves the entire project. So whether you're working inside of Blueprints or in the editor, you can always click save all to save everything. And up here you can also switch between modes. So there's a couple of modes. It's landscaping, for instance, foliage, brush painting, mesh painting. If you were to go to landscaping, you would see that it would start to generate the landscape. Here you can actually just click generate. This gives you an Unreal Engine landscape. Now, staying in this same mode, you have a couple of tools here that you can, well, as you see, you can just landscape around. And then you should just tag all of these out. You can actually also paint your landscape. So you can import materials here to paint your landscapes. There's also foliage. So if you have a couple of trees, for instance, you can add them here, place the trees around the map, which is easy for editing a big map, basically. But for now, let's go back to select again. So that's all of that. Then on the top left here, as you see, there's a message that says lighting needs to be built. So that's really normal for Unreal. Whenever you put new actors into the world, or basically any element that changes the current lighting of the scene, you will get this message. And to get rid of it, you could either just click on build all levels, which pre-computes lighting data, visibility, renders all of the necessary stuff, and sets up your navigation and stuff. Or you can just click on this drop down and select build lighting. So as soon as you do that, the swarm connection will start up, and this will get rid of your lighting error here. And also any lighting that was messed up in your scene due to you removing actors that you have placed will now be fixed. So just wait for that to finish. Usually it takes up to 1 minute max, but it really depends on your scene. Okay, so now that we changed that, let's hit save and save our map. Then up here, the most important one is this play button. There's a couple of options for playing. You can actually play in your selected viewport, which is shown right now, or you can play in an editor pie window, standalone game. And here's also some multiplayer options. So if you click, for instance, a client, you can simulate 2 clients to see whether or not multiplayer works inside of your project. So if we hit play right now, we can just walk around in the viewports that we see. And if we click on pie window, hit play, you get the small window, which you can just rescale, or you can just make it full screen to actually test your game properly. So that's a nice and neat feature. Now, the difference between Pi window and standalone is that a Pi window actually runs inside of the editor, and editor startup times might be a little bit slower than the normal standalone startup times. So if you really want to be sure of how your packaged game handles stuff, so handles your programs and whatever you decide to build, you should always run it in a standalone version of your game, which starts an actual .exe file where you can properly test the final code of your game, I would say. Okay, so this being done, I need to alt top out of here. Here we go. Close this one. Okay. Okay, and then there is also this panel up here, the Windows panel. It has your world settings, which will pop up on here on the right. And this panel here will show all of your world settings. So in Unreal Engine, you have what is called game modes, and the game mode defines the rules of all of your game. So if you're playing Capture the Flag, for instance, that's where you define all your Capture the Flag rules. Or if you have some sort of other game, that's where you would write it. So over here in the world settings panel, you can override your world game mode and change this to the game mode that you custom made for your map. That's a good feature to know and to understand. Then up here, you could go to File and to make new levels. So right now we're in the Maps folder. This is the map that we are currently in. To make new levels, you can click up here, New Level, and this is where you can select, for instance, default map, which comes with some basic lighting and stuff. You see this message again, lighting needs to be built. So this is just a default map that you can walk around or create into a new one. If you want to save this one, you have to click Save Current. You select where you want to save it. You call it map 1, for instance, hit save. That's where your map shows up. This map build data registry is just whatever compiles in the map is put into this file. You will never actually touch these files. They will always just be generated, but don't worry about these, don't mind them. And if you want to have some user interface maps, so maps that you would only use for user interface, I recommend that you use this empty map, which basically comes with nothing but just an empty map, which is great and low cost of performance for your computer when you do menu and user interface stuff. So that's what that is for. And I think that this basically sums up the basics of Unreal, how to move around and how to navigate through the engine and through the editor actually. So that's good to know. One more tip, that up here, when you go to edit, you got edit preferences. These are the editor preferences. So nothing that you apply here will actually apply inside of your game. So for instance, if you want to change your Pi window, you could change those settings here to some common resolutions to test how your game works on different monitors, for instance. So I can select 27-inch monitor. Now, if I hit play in the Pi window, it will show up 27-inch monitor. Yes, this is small, but I am on a 4K monitor, that's why. So that's a good thing to know. And then down here you have your project settings, which is really important and which you will see in my other tutorials. So here you can type out some basic description and the name of your game, for instance, project version, etc. A commonly used tab is the Maps and Modes tab. Here you can select your default game mode, for instance. You can also open this to change your default editor startup map, your default gameplay map, transition, and default server map. This is really important. And then finally down here you can specify your game instance, which is basically the king of all blueprints on top of every other blueprint. This will always exist whether you are traveling between levels or not. So if you ever want to store some important data that you always want to access within your game, I recommend saving that in the game instance. But I will have tutorials about this later. So just look around for game instance tutorials. And then the final thing that I want to show you is that down here you have inputs, and here you can program your action mappings and axes mappings. So for instance, you want to program jump. You can just add an action mapping. You can call it jump, open this one up and give them all the inputs that would trigger you to jump. And then coming off of jump, you would program your own jumping script, of course. So that's where you can find this, really useful as well. That's basically all that I will be talking about in this video. I hope this covers some basics for you and helps you out to getting started with Unreal. And then I just want to show one more thing. Next to library, you also have marketplace, which brings you to the Epic Games Marketplace, Unreal Engine Marketplace. And this is where any creator, so also you yourself, when you get more advanced, you can just upload your stuff here. So your blueprints or your 3D assets or your sound effects, whatever you can think of, you can upload it here to share between other creators. So yeah, if you're looking for any assets that will help you or that you can use to reverse engineer to figure out how stuff works. For instance, if you want to make a shooting game, you would just type in FPS and then all of the FPS stuff will pop up. So you can see some FPS items or some FPS blueprint kits like this one, multiplayer FPS basics. And you can just buy them, install them and see how other people created their creations inside of Unreal Engine. Really useful place. I myself have a lot of assets, as you can see, which over time helped me to study Unreal Engine and to figure out how some complex stuff works. So give that a check as well. Okay. Hey guys, okay, so this is the end of the video. I hope that the video helped you out and that you liked it. If it did help you out or if you liked it, please consider liking it and please consider subscribing. That helps us a lot. And be on the lookout for more videos like this. Goodbye. Hey guys!